Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, December 29th, 2016.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzCast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Eklund will be with us momentarily. And while we're waiting, we will discuss some news and happenings from yesterday in the NHL. I left the browser open here, so I don't want to hear – you don't want to hear my voice twice.
No.
Okay. A few hours after the show ended yesterday, it was announced that the Chicago Blackhawks surprisingly reached a contract extension with a forward Artemi Panarin. It was a 2-year deal for $12 million, $6 million per, heavy signing bonus in both years. Russ, first, just your broad brush thoughts on the contract.
It's a bridge deal. It's one of those deals that tells me that they'll move some other big contract and then they'll get back to Panarin in 2 years. So this is a temporary thing to keep him there, and they know what they're doing. Like, this is just standard operating procedure for the Blackhawks. If you want to have a chance at the Stanley Cup, you will do what they tell you to do contract wise, and they really have everybody over a barrel.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that usually when it's a bridge deal, there's some sort of bargain here. There's no bargain here. I mean, we talked about Kucherov, and that was in the $4 million range. And if you go a few years back, the PK Subban deal was, I think, under $3 million.
Yep.
This is market value on a long-term contract, and it was a short-term deal. Now, maybe that was by design for the Blackhawks, because they have a number of players locked up on long-term extensions and they don't want to lock themselves up on another one. But that was the thing that I was a little surprised at. Now, immediately following, because when I saw that, I posted it on our NHL Rumor Buzz column, and I came out and said, this means – Stan Bowman has never been shy to move a piece that somebody doesn't expect them to move. And we've heard the rumors. Hey, Ak, you're muted. There we're talking about Panarin, Ak. And we already started the show. We're live. We heard the rumors about Corey Crawford, about them maybe potentially moving him. He's making $6 million for another 3 years, I believe. Hosa's locked up for another 4 years. He's 37 years old. Maybe they know something that we don't about whether he's going to be there for the length of his contract, or maybe only a couple years. Yarmolson's making $4 million. I mean, there has to be another move, because this $6 million sort of locks them into place. I mean, they really don't have a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah, I think they're betting on the cap going up, about $2 to $2.5 million, which a lot of teams are. That seems to be the going, rate at this point. The teams are going with that. Whether or not that's true or not,
right?
We have a lot. There's still a lot to be determined on that. So
it's going to depend a lot on the Canadian dollar, apparently.
Yeah, and I think Kruger is their natural bet. As far as moving a player out that has it's like $3 million contract.
Well, I know, because I read a couple of the Chicago papers and posted something on, like I said, on our NHL Rumor Buzz this morning, that it was Mark Lazarus from the Chicago Sun-Times that was saying that, they may expose Kruger or Trevor Van Riemsdyk in expansion and hope that Vegas takes them, because that's a way of opening up space without having to take something back in a deal. So, maybe that's what's at work, but
they would do that. I think there's a good chance that one of those guys, I think more Kruger than Van Riemsdyk.
Right.
They seem to like Van Riemsdyk a lot. And they like Kruger too, but I think that they have more depth there. So,
but they have 8 players locked up on no move clauses, Russ.
Yeah, that's a lot. I really think Crawford's the one to go, because why would they sign Larson? Larson is a goalie that was playing over in the SHL. He could have continued to play there. He must have been told something that at some point he's going to have a chance at a job. Darling's there, who they like as well. And so, what is the reason for paying Crawford all this money? We like him. I get it. I like him. But at the end of the day, if you want to keep your core together, he seems like the logical guy to go.
And if you're going to go shopping for a cheaper goaltender, there's no better offseason than this one with all these goaltenders on the market with the expansion situation coming up. I mean, you could, if you pick out somebody who is blocked behind two goaltenders with a certain team, say, I'll throw it. I'm not saying that this is a guy who would go there or that they have interest, but a guy like Scott Wedgwood in New Jersey, who I've seen a couple times in the American Hockey League, and I think is an NHL goaltender. They could get a goalie like that or a goalie in a similar situation for a song, and maybe they think they could make a run with that type of goaltender rather than spending $6 million on Crawford.
And I think that's legit. I mean, I think, and they have been trying to. They tried to move Crawford to keep Brandon Saad. I mean, they tried a couple times. Crawford's contract is high, of course, and people are wondering on Crawford whether or not he's a product of the system or not. I don't buy it. I think Crawford's a great goalie. I really, and I was not a Crawford guy from early on. Like I was a fan of them keeping the Emmy. I'll be the first to admit it, over Crawford. But I
am too, but I look at the economics of it, and you've got an experienced goalie from overseas cheap. You've got Darling cheap. How much are you really are you gonna let Panarin go to keep Crawford? I don't think so.
Yeah, and I don't think the Chicago Blackhawks can equate their Stanley Cups with their goaltending.
No, I don't think they do either.
A lot of teams do. Like we talked about Pittsburgh and Fleury. There's no question that Fleury was such a major factor in the first Stanley Cup and getting them to the Stanley Cup Finals the year before that.
Well, the goaltending was the only thing that was interchangeable. I mean, they had Niemi in 2010 and Crawford in the last two. But I mean, where I think there's a possibility, and the thing is, any one of these moves, because I listed like three of them in the rumor buzz, was Anisimov, Yarmulson, or Crawford. Anisimov, and all three of them have no move clauses, so they would have to waive the no move clause for it to happen. But if you look at their defensive situation, I mean, Campbell's on a 1-year deal, but they've started to bring in young defensemen. They brought in Forsling, who was a draft pick. They signed Kempny from the Czech Republic. They have Trevor Van Riemsdyk if they're able to keep him. A guy like Yarmulson, who's won Stanley Cups, who's making $4 million a year, who is on the verge of turning 30, he might be an attractive piece out there for a lot of teams that are interested in defensemen, and maybe that's a direction they will go.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I can see it. And Chicago's always interested in some kind of quick thing at the deadline too. They always like to have extra space. Whether or not they can do anything at deadline this year, is a tough call, because it seems like they can't. Which is what I'm hearing with LA a lot this year. Like LA is just trying, but they're having a really hard time, and they just put, I guess, Toffoli was it they put on IR. It's going to save them some money, but there's a lot of teams right now that are cap strapped that normally are players at the deadline. That's just what's making the deadline more interesting for me this year than usual, because it's talking to a lot of different people, and to be honest, a lot more not more interesting, but in the past, the people who have been involved in the trade deadline were definitely people who, most of the mainstream writers up in Canada had sources with, where this year you're seeing a lot of teams that are involved in the deadline that might not be those kind of type of teams, which is good for a person like myself who has sources in different kind of places than the norm, So I think that's what's going to make it interesting, moving down the way here.
Well, the teams that have cap room to use and to take on salary, even if it's short term, have the potential of hitting hitting the mother load, because like a team like Carolina doesn't want to lock themselves into anything long term, but they did make a deal with Chicago to take on Bickle's contract to get Teravainen, to get a talented young player. They've got a ton of room on the cap. If there are teams out there that want to clear guys off of their roster who are UFAs that they don't think are going to help them, or will trade prospects to take somebody like that to be able to get somebody else from another organization, teams like that are going to be in a position to get a return, to get something that is usable going forward. A team like Toronto has $13 million, I believe. I know it's $11 million, three players who have not been put on long-term injury. They can open up that room, putting Lupul, Robidas, Horton on LTIR and take on salary to get a prospect or a defenseman, something of that nature. I think that's where the excitement of the deadline is going to be.
Here's another reason, and I said Larson, I meant Lars Johansson. I was merging him and another goalie together. He's 29 years old.
Yeah.
So why in the world would the Blackhawks sign a 29-year-old free agent goalie if they're going to keep Crawford long term, unless they're going to trade Darling? But then there's no reason to trade Darling because he doesn't make any money. And and right now he's played 19 games with Rockford. He's got a .905 save percentage. So this year he's learning the league. You got to think next year they could go with him as the backup and Darling as the starter if they needed to do it next year. If not, in 2 years, that's when they do it. At the end of Panarin's deal, and they say, hold on, we're going to get you, but we've got to do this first. It really does seem like that's the plan in place. I got to see how many years they sign Johansson to, but my guess is to at least a 2-year entry level.
Definitely to be a backup. Like, he's the experienced backup guy. You know, that's what they're looking at with him. They're not looking at him, I don't think, to be the guy.
I don't think so either, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. But, you know, normally those type of goalies, we've seen a history of that a lot in the past. You know, we've got guys like that come in and are, you know, are very serviceable backups because they've got a lot of experience and they know what they're doing. Remember, that's what Czechmanek was originally when the Flyers got him, was a backup.
Yeah, he should have stayed that way.
But I think and that very, very well may be possible, Russ, but I think there are enough lower price options out there that would improve Darling and somebody else. I mean, they could get they could go out and sign Brian Elliott, who has always been a favorite. I know. I'm just saying they could go out and sign a veteran guy like that for 1 year for $2 million and have a better chance of repeating than maybe, Yeah,
but here's the thing: they've signed Johansson to a 1-year deal at $575,000, right?
Yeah.
If they like what they see, I'm sure they're going to give him a 2-year deal this offseason. He won goalie of the year overseas, so he's already got a better pedigree than a lot of the backups in this league. And so I think X right. I think ultimately they're looking at him probably as the backup and Darling as the starter. And Darling is starting to play a little bit more because Crawford had these injuries. Another thing, he had the appendectomy, and they're getting a better look, and they know what they have in Darling. I didn't notice the difference with the players as far as how they treat him, how anything else. He gets treated the same way as Crawford. So I really do think this is the start of it.
Right. No, I'm with you. I'm very much with you. I think that there's a lot more going on in Chicago. I've learned definitely in Chicago, you have to learn to look beyond. They try to be a couple steps ahead.
Yes,
all the time. This is a couple step ahead type move, bringing in this goalie, and they've done it before. They've done these other moves. I forget what they did one year that led to. Obviously, they got a lot of help from Patrick Kane getting hurt and being on long-term injury a few years ago and coming back for the playoffs. That always helps, but.
They signed Brad Richards at that point.
Right, they signed Richards, and then they signed up that they'll make little tiny moves along the way too.
Yes,
they're very good at moving guys around. They'll pick up salary. They'll get a guy and the teams will retain their salary. Remember they did that with, was it Versteeg or who's the other guy?
It was Versteeg.
Yeah,
I always get Versteeg and the other guy from Florida confused that they got in Chicago. But yeah, they have they're an outward thinking team, and they're able to do that because they're so good. They're up ahead. They're way ahead in the conference pretty much. They're the only team in the West that's just killing it.
Well, I mean the thing though, and if you look at the core of that team, and the one thing that really stands out is Seabrook and Keith are both over the age of 30. They're both great defensemen still, but they're over the age of 30, and we know. Okay,
not for them. Doesn't matter.
I think it might. I mean, the thing is that we're talking about two players with no move clauses, so if they don't want to go anywhere, they're not going to go anywhere. But there's a window here, and
I think they're expecting to have those two and Jarmelson for another 5 years. I think that's the window. I think that's what they're expecting.
Right.
I do.
That's safe. I think you're right about that. I think that window that's a good size window for them. I mean, the next 5 years.
They could win 2 more, maybe 3 more cups in that window.
They're going to be in it every year. They're going to have a shot every year, right? So,
I mean, it's
a serviceable goalie, and you'd laugh about guys like Brian Elliott, but that's exactly what they need. I mean,
it's pretty optimistic to have a 5-year window with with two defensemen who are 33 and 31. That's
but it can be done if these guys are, in that kind of shape. And so far, I haven't seen any drop off in any of those 3 games.
Right.
None of their game has dropped off yet. So I don't have any reason to believe it's going to in 2 years. In 3 or 4, yeah, anything's possible.
Yeah, I mean, things happen. Things drop quickly with those guys, but that they when they start to go, they go fast. But I wanted to touch base on another thing today, and that is Daniel Alfredsson, who's having the big retirement thing tonight in Ottawa. And it really and talk about Alfredsson for a little bit, just because this guy has really been sort of under the radar for a lot of his career. And, as has the Ottawa Senators in general. I mean, the Ottawa Senators are such a strange team. My memory of the Ottawa Anaheim Stanley Cup final, which I think still to this day was the least covered Stanley Cup final ever. I mean, when I
sent somebody, but it was not very well covered.
It was one of the most.
Yeah, you guys were in the minority. We were there too. I was the only person. I mean, I was representing XM Radio, the NHL's XM Radio, in Anaheim on the ice when it ended. I mean, I was the only person. They didn't send anybody. They just had me go around and talk to. So it's like that Stanley Cup final was crazy because. And I was always thinking to myself at the time, I remember I wrote an article about why is Canada not, I mean, Canada hasn't won a Stanley Cup in a long time. Here they are. They're in the Stanley Cup finals again with Ottawa, with the Ottawa Senators are in the Stanley Cup finals. Why can't they get behind this, I mean, they were definitely got behind Edmonton. All of Canada got behind Edmonton a couple years prior with Carolina.
Because in spite of the fact that Ottawa is the capital of Canada, that is the team with the least footprint in Canada. I think less than the Winnipeg Jets. The Ottawa Senators have literally no footprint in Canada.
They don't have as wide a footprint, but I will disagree that they have. I mean, because what I do feel about the Ottawa Senators fans is that they are among the. I mean, they are just the ones who are Ottawa Senators fans are crazy passionate about the Ottawa Senators.
Sure.
This is a team that almost feels it has like for lack of a better comparison, like a Green Bay Packers feel to it. At times. No, because this is it really does. I mean, because the honest to God truth is this is a town with like 3 bars in it sometimes, where all the players and all the fans hang out at the same place. They know each other. It's very different than any other place in Canada and most places in the U.S. even. But yet it is a Canadian city. They do love their Sens. They are rumor crazy people. I mean, they love rumors. This is a rumor crazy town.
Well, I'm not doubting. See, I'm not doubting the passion of the Ottawa hockey fan. I just think that the situation with that franchise where you have it's like Sunrise with Florida, where you have the building outside of the city, which I think
no, that's a problem. No question about it.
That's a problem, and it's a government town, so. You have a lot of people from outside of Ottawa staying in Ottawa, members of parliament. So you don't have the deep fan base that a team like Montreal or a team like Toronto who are steeped in tradition, or even the Western Canada teams who've been in existence since the merger or 1970 in the case of Vancouver. I mean, they're a newer market. They're only 25 years old, I believe. And, I think that they've planted the seeds. They have some fans, but I just don't think that there is as many and as passionate as other fan bases.
Well, they're new and they're old. I mean, remember the Ottawa Senators existed before everybody almost. I mean, there was no Ottawa Senators team for quite a while, but there was an Ottawa Senators team for many years.
Yeah, but everybody who rooted for that team is dead. So that's there is tradition, yes.
And this is very much was very much a Montreal Canadiens town until the Ottawa Senators came back into existence. But one of the players that really has defined. I mean, the player I think that's defined this team is Daniel Alfredsson. I mean, he is the player who is he's the biggest star in Ottawa Senators history, in my opinion. I mean, he was always loved. I mean, there was a weird moment there where he went to Detroit and everything like that, and that's still how that all. But even after that, they signed him for a 1-day contract. They brought him back out to skate in the warm-ups because they really wanted him to be remembered as a Senator. He's still there as a big part of their group. He was, so some of his stats are kind of crazy. 17 years with the Ottawa Senators.
I think he played the All-Star game that was there. He played in it, right?
Yep, he did.
Yeah, and I was there for that, and the people just went crazy. I mean,
1999 to 2013, he was the captain of this team. So, 14 years. He played on many different lines. Probably the most famous, in my opinion, and the greatest was the cash line, which was Alfredsson, Spezza, and Heatley.
Yeah.
Do you remember that line?
Yeah.
Back in the day. So, I guess some people call it the pizza line, right? That was what I remember that too, but it was called the cash line. This was before Heatley got traded to the Sharks, right? That was in that line, era.
Yeah.
Heatley, that was a great line for a while there. Spezza and Alfredsson were always linked together as well. It's interesting how Spezza had his, hot and cold detractors in Ottawa, and I always thought Spezza was unfairly treated by the Ottawa fans. Well, the ones who were unfair to him. I mean, several of them loved him, of course, but there were definitely some who treated Spezza wrong. And when you watch Spezza play, he's still one of the most underappreciated. Spezza's still one of the underappreciated players in the league.
I think that's fair.
His whole career. I mean, the fact that he's never been considered more than just a good player, when Spezza's always been pretty much a star player and has star qualities for sure.
Well, I know that. I mean, believe me, with the number of Leafs Senators playoff matchups, I guess it's a testament to maybe how great of a player that Alfredsson was that he was viscerally hated in Toronto.
Oh, of course.
And was labeled as a a backstabber and a weasel for hitting Darcy Tucker into the boards and mocking Matt Sundin. But that being said, as somebody who has followed the Leafs for most of my life, I would cast a vote for Daniel Alfredsson for the Hall of Fame. I think he's a Hall of Fame.
No way.
I know. That's an interesting one because I don't think there's any question.
Go ahead, X. Sorry.
I don't think there's any question to Alfredsson being in the Hall of Fame. So go ahead. You give.
There is a question. His only award is a King Clancy. He's not a point-a-game player. He doesn't have 500 goals. He doesn't have a Stanley Cup victory. Like what? He doesn't have enough other things on his resume. If some of the
1,100 points in. He's got 1,108 points in 1,178 games.
Actually, he's got even more than that. You got to read the Detroit line too.
Well, no, that's. Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
No, you'll see.
So, he played for, just think about it. I mean, that's a ton of points. I mean,
I did think about it.
I think you're being fair about it. Alfredsson was always a two-way player. I mean, Alfredsson was a solid defensive player. Could have won the Selke in his career. Never did, but could have. I felt like Alfredsson was, he was definitely the shutdown guy for Team Sweden. In many,
really good player. I don't imagine him being in the Hall of Fame though. He hasn't done enough other things.
Well, the thing is though, the Stanley Cup victory thing, when it comes to anybody other than goaltenders, has been thrown out the window because Matt Sundin didn't win a Stanley Cup, and he was.
If Alfredsson played his whole career in Toronto, he'd be in the Hall of Fame.
That's not fair. I don't even think that's fair. But here's the funny thing. So
every bit of good, if not better, than Sundin in his career.
We just talked about
that. I think
so. How would you put Sundin ahead of him?
Sundin was a more dominant player. He was a center. He was. I'm not dismissing Alfredsson's accomplishments. He was a very a top level forward for 15 years. That is pretty tough to carry forth. But I mean, in an era where Clark Gillies makes Clark
Gillies, they're going to say won all those Stanley Cups. That's
right.
what Clark Gillies.
Right, or Rod Langway, or Bernie Federko, who never won.
Rod Langway was a way better defenseman, I think, than Daniel.
I know, but what I'm saying is, I think cases can be made for players like Bernie Federko. Cases can be made for players who didn't win Stanley Cups. I mean, Alexander McGillney. I know he won a cup with the Devils, I believe. I think Alexander McGillney should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Well, he might get in over time because of all the other stuff. But here's the thing. Okay, so right now we talked about Jason Spezza. We talked about Daniel Alfredsson.
Yeah.
Who is averaging more points per game as a percentage in his career so far? Did Alfredsson do better, or Spezza's slightly higher?
Spezza's a way more offensive-minded player than Alfredsson.
Okay, so here's the thing. So let's say Spezza ends his career at this 0.95 points a game. He'll have more points than Alfredsson, and he won't make the Hall of Fame.
No, I don't think Spezza is.
That's my point. You're going by a guy that is beloved, but
No. He has almost over 700 assists as a right wing. I mean, that's like that's.
You want me to find a guy with more than that?
Let's throw this out there for a second. You're gonna say, based on his NHL career, can we at least agree he's on the bubble?
Yeah, I think he's on the bubble.
Okay, so based on his NHL career, he's on the bubble. So you see where I'm going with this?
No, I don't see where you're going with.
All right.
What, you're going to say because he won a gold medal in 2006 that's going to put him over the top?
Internationally 14 times, okay? The 2006 gold medal, the 2014 silver medal. And his abilities to his scoring for Sweden was incredible. His points shows. I'll get into them in a second.
But nobody cares about that in the Hall of Fame. We've discussed
no, but
that.
it's the Hockey Hall of Fame. They do care about it.
No, they don't. We thought they did, but there's plenty of guys that have greater resumes.
Part of Eric Lindros getting into the Hall of Fame is because of his international.
No, actually, I don't think so. I don't think that did it. I think it was his points per game and shortened career. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what it was.
74 points in 88 international games. For Alfredsson. So almost a point a game internationally.
Let's say the international games for Daniel Alfredsson will be about as meaningful as the KHL games for Jaromir Jagr when it comes to his time.
Right.
Won't be
Gold, 3 silvers and 3 bronze. So that's 7 out of half of the times he entered, he won a medal with Sweden. That's pretty great. I mean, and he was the captain of that team often. He was often the guy who was on that. He was the guy from that.
Was Lidstrom on that team?
Sure, Lidstrom was on the team. Forsberg was on that team.
They're going to basically say, was Lundqvist on that team? Yes, he's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Was Sundin on that team? Yes.
Those guys are the train that drove it. Alfredsson was another guy aboard. That's what it was. He wasn't one of the main catalysts.
Nope.
Wasn't.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't see him as a. I don't see Alfredsson. Is he the best player in Ottawa Senators history?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
All right. So this is a team that's been around a very long time now. They've been around for how many years now? The Senators? 25 years.
Yeah.
Right. They came in with the same time as. Did they come in with the Predators?
They came in with Tampa.
So it's 20 years, right? Is that right?
No. It was like 1990.
Right.
Okay. So 25 years roughly, right?
Yeah, 92. I think it was May 92.
Right. So that's he is the best Senator in all that period of time. I mean, I guess you could maybe argue Carlson now is going to be the best Senator ever, but I don't know.
Possible.
There are people who compared him to Yzerman, and I think that's a good comparable. Alfredsson. I think Yzerman, two-way player, similar.
Yzerman's a comparable? Come on.
I do.
It's not even close.
1992 they were founded. So
all right. What are Yzerman's point totals?
Yzerman is head and shoulders above Alfredsson. Come on.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think so. I think we get caught up. No, I think we get caught up in the lore of these guys, like the lore of Sundin, the lore of Yzerman. Alfredsson always did this.
We're old enough to remember that before the Stanley Cup win in 1997, there was no lore with Steve Yzerman.
I know.
He was considered
a Red Wings house. I knew all about him. He was
considered a choke artist before he became, a captain on the level of Mark Messier. He was. They were talking about trading him to Ottawa in the mid '90s. So yeah, I mean,
let me give you a name. So Marian Hossa is a right wing, right? And he's got 597 assists, but he's also got 515 goals. He's a guaranteed all-time Hall of Famer. Alfredsson doesn't have those kinds of numbers. And Hossa's played for the same era.
200 more assists than Hossa, right there you're talking about. He's got
but Hossa's got 515 goals. He's going to end up with 575 goals.
That's so a little bit more goals.
A little bit.
No, but the points are almost the same, right?
No. Hossa's got – I'll look up his points per game.
Yeah, Hossa's games and points totals are pretty similar.
Hold on.
I mean,
and Hossa's even a better defensive player than Alfredsson.
I don't know about that either.
Yes, he is. Now he is. Early in his career, he was a pure goal scorer, but when
Hossa was never the leader, Alfredsson is. Okay, so when Hossa's a good guy and a solid,
that's fine. He may not be the leader.
Alfredsson was the captain of that Senate team for years.
when they were both on the same team, they were playing different roles. Alfredsson was the two-way guy, and Hossa was the scorer. He was the pure scorer.
Right.
Now, later in his career, Hossa has become that two-way guy.
Right now, his points per game are slightly below Alfredsson at .88, but his goals per game are at .41, and we'll see what Alfredsson's goals per game are. Right. To me, it's not even.
But Alfredsson's assists per game, we already said he has 200 more assists than Alfredsson.
Yes, and Hossa's not done.
No, Hossa's not done. That's a good point. I'll give you that.
We're just comparing him today.
Yeah, Yzerman. Yeah, Yzerman has. Well, his statistics are way in front of.
Yeah, it's not even close. We can't even go with Steve Yzerman.
We
I don't know. I mean, I think that
0.36. Here's the thing. All right, so yeah, Alfredsson was .36 goals per game. Hossa's already got more points. Or actually, no, he's a little under. He's got years to go still. Hossa's still going to be playing.
Oh yeah, no, Hossa's still playing, but that's because he's younger, obviously. So I mean,
right. But what I'm saying is he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. Alfredsson will still be waiting, most likely.
No. Hossa's points. Hossa is a good defensive player, obviously. Great defensive player, great penalty killer. They're both great defensive players. Yeah. But when you're the captain of one team your entire career versus like traveling from team to team to team, I think that should matter. I think it should matter. I really do. I think that Hossa's, and not always his fault. Hossa, I mean, the first trade obviously wasn't his fault, but after that, he made a lot of decisions to go from team to team to team.
Sure, but he's still going to end up with close to 600 goals at the end of the day.
He's been in five. He's been in.
No, but he how many? He was traded to one of those teams, right?
He was traded from Ottawa to Atlanta in the Danny Heatley deal. He was traded for Colby Armstrong, and I think it was a first-round pick. Then he signed with Detroit. Then he signed with Chicago.
Yeah.
So, but he's been in Russ. He's been in 6 Stanley Cup Finals. He's won 3 Stanley Cups.
Yeah, and actually, I think he is ahead of Alfredsson now in points, and I think he's actually played just slightly more games than Alfredsson now too, because Alfredsson did have some injuries in his career.
No, he definitely had injuries in his career, and there were some, there were some years where he played, like especially in 2010 and 2012, he played almost half the games. I guess everyone did in 2010, right? That's not really fair.
You can take a poll, and everybody will put Marian Hossa in before Daniel Alfredsson. Like, it won't even be close.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Go ahead.
I will do a poll. I will do a poll. I mean, and again, I think that might be true also because there's a bias here. There's a natural bias here that goes on with Ottawa, against Ottawa, where Hossa has played in places like Chicago. He's played in Pittsburgh. He's played in places where, Hossa is going to obviously gain a lot of attention and a lot of publicity playing in those places. Again, when you play in Ottawa, it's a very unheralded thing for him to go.
Yeah, Hossa's just behind him in assists. He'll beat him in the next year.
There's small market bias, but it's also the type of player that he was, Zach. He was not. I mean, he was very popular in Ottawa. I don't perceive that Daniel Alfredsson was a well-liked player. I mean, that came out in 2007 with the slap shot incident. On Chris Pronger in the final.
Oh, I was at that game. That was amazing. I want to say how happy I was. It was at the time when Alfredsson did that.
Yeah,
you had to be in that building to understand that. Like, that's one of those weird plays where you saw the emotion riding back and forth, and what Pronger was doing, knocking guys out. And I was in that building when that happened. And I wrote about it. I wrote about what a great captain Alfredsson was for doing that. It was one of those situations where you could, and that whole building, that just solidified their love of Daniel Alfredsson forever. I mean, Pronger was killing people. He had knocked 2 guys out of the series with concussions. He should have been suspended. He was completely, and he
was suspended for a game. I think.
Right, he was suspended. He should have been suspended for the whole series. I mean, it was ridiculous. He didn't play. But only because he was Chris Pronger, and they didn't want to take a star like that out of the lineup, because later they were going to hire him, right? And I love Chris Pronger.
Here's my last thing about Hossa.
7 years later, they're going to hire him.
But I'm just saying, he shouldn't have been in that series, and Alfredsson knew it.
They're going to hire him 7 years later.
And Alfredsson took it into his took. I was great. I mean, it took guts and more than guts to fire that shot at Pronger. I mean, Alfredsson knew he was headhunting him the whole time.
Here's what I'll say about Hossa. Right now he's 103 assists behind, so he'll catch him. He has more goals, He is getting closer in points. He's a plus 247 in his career, and Alfredsson's a plus 155. Like, if those two go up on the same ballot, if that were to ever happen, Alfredsson would not have a chance.
All right, but okay, let's put that in perspective. The plus minus, which of course is a team.
Oh, but he's been on so many different teams. So now how are you going to
he's put himself into situations where teams have gone to the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, you're talking about
Thrashers were going to the Stanley Cup?
No, of course not. Early in Hosa's career, I agree with you 100%.
Okay, but I mean that's
after that. I mean, for the last several years, I mean, the
last several, but I mean,
so what you're saying?
Great teams. I mean, Chicago plus minus players are incredible.
So what you're saying is that Alfredsson should be rewarded for having the loyalty to stay with a franchise with ownership that wouldn't spend money to do what they needed to do to win.
I think that's part of it. I do. I think just loyalty to stay with one franchise in general, and to try to stick it out to try to win with that team. I mean, to try to really win. I mean, you know, throughout the whole thing, I mean, he goes to a Stanley Cup final. People forget that early in his career, if we had this question, say, in 2007, we would have been like, holy cow, definitely Alfredsson's in the Stanley Cup, in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he was taking – the Senators were a playoff team. They played 11 games one year, 12 games another year, 18 games another year, 14 another. I mean, they were playing a lot of playoff games. This is a team that was completely –
right, and Hosa was a part of that. Hosa had 45 goals for the Senators, 36 goals, 31 goals.
Part of it, but that's not – but Alfredsson had, you know, in 2007, 2008, in 70 games, had 40 goals and 49 assists. I mean, you're talking about like 89 points in 70 games in 2007-08, and then 87 points in 77 games in 06-05, and 103 points in 77 games in 05-06. Yeah, those numbers that are seriously like those. That was the prime of his career there, from 05 to say 09.
All right.
Hosa had 43 goals and 100 points with the Atlanta Thrashers.
Yeah.
Okay, we all agree Hosa's a great player.
Can we talk about something else?
And I think both of them should be in the Hall of Fame. Can I give you that?
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about.
I think Alfredsson definitely deserves. I mean, that doesn't. We shouldn't penalize Alfredsson for Hosa being a great player.
No, it's a comparison.
I understand that, but they're both Hall of Famers. If you're going to find somebody who had a great career who's not in the Hall of Fame that is equivalent to his career, then yes, that's fine. But Hosa will be in the Hall of Fame. I agree with you. He will be. So, I mean, so basically you're making my point by showing you how close Hosa's numbers are to Alfredsson's numbers right now.
Close. He's got 4 years left in his career. He's not close. That's my point.
How many games has Hosa played in his career right now?
I think it's 1,200 and something.
All right, so 1,246 games are what Alfredsson played in his career.
Yeah, hold on.
So they're right now, points wise, they're the same. They're points wise, you know, Alfredsson's already won because he's played in the amount of games. They played about 1,200 games each. So that's the deal. I mean, so yeah, Hosa's going to get more.
He's played at 1,270 and he's got 4 years left
on his contract.
But he's going to play 3 more years.
And I think to say he's going to get another 100 assists is very, very generous for Hosa.
I don't know. Go look at his numbers. They never dip.
Can we talk about something else, please? Please?
No, I know. I knew this wouldn't be a fun topic.
By the way, while Alfredsson's watching him play, Hosa has 16 goals. That's all. Yeah. Move on.
Okay.
In the same amount of games, Alfredsson put up better points than Hosa. That's the bottom line. So. And no one questions Hosa for a second being in the Hall of Fame. The best player on the Senators team, one of the best players for 3 or 4 years in the NHL there, for sure. One of the best two-way players, went to a Stanley Cup final. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's a no-brainer. But anyway, that you guys can tell us what you think, and definitely do so on Twitter, at Sportsology and at Eklund. You tell us what you think. At Mike in Buffalo, you tell us what you think if he's a Hall of Famer or not. I'm going to do a Twitter poll right now and find out.
Okay.
Mike, go ahead. Give us something else.
It came out just before the show started that Matt Murray is out week to week with a lower body injury. To me,
so it sounds like a groin.
Yeah, well, groin or high ankle sprain or something of that nature. They didn't specify what it was. I didn't see the cause of the injury. All I know is that all this recent talk, and it's been constant over the last month or so, about Marc-Andre Fleury being traded. You can pretty much stick those rumors because, yeah, I mean now I think you're keeping Fleury for the rest of the year, and you're trading him in the offseason because they're not going to risk, especially with Murray coming off an injury and the risk of, depending on what it is. If it's a high ankle sprain and it's a goalie, you need a dependable backup because you don't know whether he's going to re-injure it or not. I think this is big news for the trade deadline and for the Penguins.
It is big news. You know what? I'll tell you what, and I need a goalie in my fantasy league. I'm picking up Carter Hutton after his big win last night. We need to talk about that. but I'm picking him up because Matt Murray's my other goalie. Anyhow, I'm doing that as we speak.
You guys know that Carter Hutton is my favorite backup goalie of all time, and
we know that.
He was a flyer. We should point that out.
No, he was definitely for a very short period of time. Not a good flyer, but yep, a flyer.
He never played a game. He just dressed.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, this is a big deal for them, but we'll see. I think they're still covered, Mike. So I don't think it's not a death blow. That's for sure.
No, no. I mean, they're very lucky that they haven't made that move that everybody seems to want them to make. That they haven't. Because can you imagine? The fact that say they would have traded Fleury before the Christmas break, and then this injury happens, and then Tristan Jarry is your number one goalie. You go from having one of the best goaltending situations in the league to not one of the worst, because I think Jarry's a good young goalie, but to having an inexperienced guy in there. So, that's. I mean, I think I think this in a way could be a good thing for Pittsburgh because if you look at Fleury's statistics, his save percentage is not bad, but his goals against was not good at all. It was over 3 when they played against Toronto before the holiday. So if he gets a lot of games and plays the way we know Marc-Andre Fleury can, I think that'll only help his value in the offseason.
Yes, I agree. No, I agree with that, and I think that we're going to see more of that than we think. I know I saw Darren Dreger yesterday talking about Shattenkirk and how the St. Louis Blues may want to keep him just as their own rental, he called it. Which you've talked about before is very possible. It's very possible especially because when you think about the fact that Hitchcock is a 1-year deal, right? So that's interesting. So Hitchcock really beyond this year. What is Hitchcock? He's not going to be pushing to move Shattenkirk at all. He's going to be. He's definitely going to keep. He's going to want to keep all of his pieces there that he can get, unless he can get more scoring, which the Blues do need some more scoring.
They do. But the Blues clubbed the Flyers over the head last night. We have to talk about this game.
It was. I mean, it was a close game, but yeah.
6-3. It wasn't that close.
It was close 3. The Flyers were leading the game with 10 minutes left to go, right? I mean, it was 3-2 at that point. Yeah. And then, the Blues did pile it on for sure, and they with a couple really quick goals. The Blues are a very good team. I mean, and the Flyers caught them sleeping definitely in the beginning of the game. I thought the Blues came out really flat, and the Flyers didn't have a good third period, which is, it looked as if maybe Mason, maybe they need to consider using their backups a little bit more. The Flyers as time goes on here.
Maybe.
Right? Much as we talk about Mason has to be an everyday goalie, it doesn't mean every single day. I mean, they really haven't. They really have used Stolars and I guess.
Well, just to illustrate Drager's point, Shattenkirk is second on the Blues in scoring. I think Kevin said that yesterday to how important he has been to their team right now. If you base the fact on what Drager is saying, that he thinks that Shattenkirk is going to get 7 or 8 years, depending on if it's the Blues, it's 8 years, which I don't think is going to happen, but 7 years and close to $7 million. He's going to go free agent. Nobody is going to trade for him or give the value that the Blues want unless they can get him locked up on a long-term deal. And if he's this close to free agency, unless it's someplace he wants to go to, that's not happening. So I think St. Louis really doesn't have a choice but to keep him and see how far they can go.
They're keeping him. Yeah, that's what I thought all along. Anyhow.
No, I think that's the case, but I agree with you, and I still have them. The percentages are higher for him to stay there. But I think that at the end of the day, there are some teams that are going to make really big pushes, and that the curiosity will be how big those pushes are. And if how interested St. Louis is in definitely staying with that as it goes along, because I think you'll see some big pushes here.
The only thing that makes sense though is a team that is contending for the Stanley Cup making a push and giving up future assets. If it's a team, say like Boston, who's been rumored, why would they expend significant young assets to get Shattenkirk when they can just wait till July 1st and have him go in the open market.
That's what I think will happen.
Yeah. I think that's most likely to happen as well. But there's still a lot of time to go with this thing,
Sure.
and the Blues have been up and down, and they're a good solid team right now. They're very much in the playoffs at this point, but
Robbie Fabry had a nice hat trick last night. He had his first career hat trick.
Yeah. No, he's a great little player. Fabry, he's a really fun player to watch.
But he had struggled. This was definitely so far. There was sophomore jinx type of things coming out there, about him. But I think he has 23 or 24 points now, so he's starting to come around. If he has a good second half, then that's. But right now, the way the Blues are, Paul Stastny is hurt. Laterra is not scoring as much. It's Tarasenko, and that's about it offensively. Now, if Fabry comes around and they get some other secondary offense, then they may have a chance. Then the big question mark goes back to Jake Allen and whether Jake Allen is a number one or not, which we can debate longer than Alfredsson and Hall of Fame or not.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's coming. That moment is coming where we're going to be debating that. That's the way it goes, right? Let's talk a little bit about.
I want to give you a quote because I think this is a big loss for the Flyers. And even Hackstall finally said something meaningful. He said, "Tonight we just wanted too easy of a night. We wanted to play too easy of a game." And he's right. He's exactly right, because he played against a team that plays a full 60, and now he's finally starting to play more teams that play a full 60. And because, a lot of that streak, we talked about it. They didn't play a lot of these kinds of teams with this kind of pedigree.
You're right. That's very true.
And so this is now where their defense, not the offense, because the offense was fine. The power play was 1 for 4. But this is a game where their defense sort of let him down. I'm not going to say Mason let him down, because I don't think Mason had a bad game. He wasn't totally on it, I'll say that. But it wasn't a bad game. But this is now a game where you have to see what the Flyers do after this, because now this is something where there's just been a little chip away. That's all. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, the interesting thing about this whole thing, and we're going to get into it soon, because soon we'll be doing our whole, mathematical thing as to who has the best chance to make it the playoffs and all that stuff, which will be like a month or two away, right after the deadline. But what you have to remember about the Flyers is at this point, okay, they played 37 games, which is a lot. It's more than most teams. They have only played the Metro Division 7 times.
I know.
Which is insane. That's like so. And now again tonight they're playing out west. They're really just. When you look at you look at a team like the Rangers, they played the Metro Division 13 times. The Penguins are 10-4 against the Metro Division. The Flyers are 4-3 against the Metro. The Blue Jackets are 5-0 against the Metro. They've only played the Metro Division 5 times. The Blue Jackets. So when you look at the Blue Jackets and the Flyers, you got to realize that the Metro Division is such a good division that you have to deal with the fact that you've got to beat a lot of. They have a lot of teams to come. There's a lot.
Things out a little bit. It can.
It's going to, I think, and I think Pittsburgh's record is not as good as it should be. I think the Rangers' record is not as good as it should be based on that. I think both teams will run away with it eventually. I do. I think they will take it off when you get to, the other. Columbus is a perfect 5-0 against the Metro Division. That's impressive, but it's only 5 games out of 33. So,
but Flyers Sharks, this is a bad game for the Flyers. Going to San Jose, this is a bad game. Like, if they win this game, I'll be impressed. But losing to St. Louis, now going to San Jose, this is a bad game for them. Yeah,
no, this is a really tough one for them. And they against the Pacific Division, they have not historically been very good. It's not their best division. They've actually been oddly good against the Central the last couple of years. As Central's been.
Just briefly have to mention this because there was a natural hesitancy for people in the Toronto media to expound on the potential greatness of Austin Matthews, because obviously he's a 19-year-old kid who they've stopped. That has stopped, because now he's got 17 goals. I think it's 11 in the last 14 games in terms of goals. He's 2 behind Patrick Laine. He is dominating. Literally dominating games. He scored a goal early last night against Florida, assisted on William Nylander's goal. The problem with the Leafs, and Mitch Marner had a great game too, is you've got Marner, you've got Matthews, and then the rest of the team is, Freddie Anderson is playing great, but the rest of the team is still not there. They were up 2-0 against Florida. They blew the lead in about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And they still won in a shootout, but and I'm writing something about this today, whether that the playoffs is a possibility or a pipe dream, and I'm still sort of stuck in the middle here because I can't see them making the playoffs with the defense that they have right now, with the fact that they don't have a backup goaltender, and they have, they had to be forced to play Anderson 65 to 70 games, and they really don't have. They have some good forwards, but it's a lot of inconsistency there when they're playing 8 or 9 rookies every night.
Oh yeah, and then yet they're one of the teams they're in the playoff running. I mean, they're right there. I honestly, it feels like Tampa, Carolina, and Toronto are the 3 teams that I think have the best shot here.
Well, Carolina's at a disadvantage because they can't. The spot that's available right now is 3rd place in the Atlantic. Right now, Philadelphia and Washington are out of range. I mean, maybe if Carolina keeps going the way they're going, maybe they can catch up to one of them. But
not that far out of range. They play the Flyers 5 times still.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard that the other day. I'm not sure. They play them 5 times this year. I'm not sure if the Flyers have played Carolina already this year.
I think they have played them once.
Yeah, but
I think they played them once.
Yeah, I think you're right. Once or twice, maybe even. But they have definitely 5 games. So they can catch the Flyers with those when you have those games.
And actually, they're doing well. I mean, that is a possibility. Like that's the thing. There's a lot of things left.
Incredible. I mean, Cam Ward's having an incredible season.
He is. Cam Ward has really resurrected himself. I mean, it has helped that a lot of his defensemen have gotten better and they're a year older, and that's helped them. The added offense has helped too.
No, for sure. Let's look a little bit at let's look at seeing what's going on Twitter as far as my poll goes.
You didn't even, all you did was put, is he a Hall of Famer or not? You didn't put him up against Hossa. So
I wasn't supposed to put him up against Hossa.
Yes, you were.
Come on now. The committee's going to meet. Okay.
Peter Tessier, if he thinks Alfredsson is good as Bore, Sedin, and Neely, he's crazy.
All right. Well, Peter's right.
And I like Alfredsson. I don't want to be in the position of bashing him.
55% say yes, Alfredsson should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's 55 to 45 right now. I voted no, but I'm just.
I voted yes. I did.
But Mike, do you agree with Peter? Do you think he's in the league of Sedin and Bore and Cam Neely?
No, he's in the league of Bore, Neely, and it was Sundin, not Sedin. It was Sundin.
Sorry, Sundin.
No, but I think he's in the league of Gillies and Federico, who are in.
There's a lot of guys in those leagues, but then you've got to have cups or you got to have something.
Right. But
Federico had a ton of points.
They've already broken the mold here. When you let it, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like Bernie Federico was a pretty damn good center for the Blues for a number of years, but I didn't think he was a Hall of Famer. But they've let him in the Hall of Fame. So you know what? If that's the case, then Daniel Alfredsson's a Hall of Famer.
Except Federico had a lot more points. He did.
Yes, yeah. In a more offensive era.
But he did have those points. I mean, at the end of the day, that's he had them.
But some players aren't point scorers. I mean, he put up points while being the best defensive player on his team too. I mean, that's like something that just seems to be forgotten about here. Like that you can actually put up those kind of numbers and yet always be a solid defensive player, which Alfredsson was. I mean, that was hugely important to Ottawa during those playoff runs. I mean, that was what made him so difficult to play against.
All right, but here's another thing. So people are now comparing Lindros to Alfredsson. Lindros had so much of a bigger impact to the NHL than Alfredsson. I don't even know how that's a discussion. Like, I don't even know how Lindros was a player.
I agree. I mean, Lindros had so much more hype too. I mean, that's just. I mean,
But he won big awards too. Alfredsson won a King Clancy.
I know.
Peter says via Twitter, I think Sundin shouldn't be in. Sets the bar too low. Before we end the show, we got to talk about the rumor that you posted today because I thought it was very interesting.
Yes, we do. I'm just dumbfounded by this whole thing.
I know, but let's.
I know. I will talk about it. All right. Remember Jacob Trouba? He signed a while ago. He signed a while ago with Winnipeg. We all thought, okay, that's not going to happen. You know, he's not going to get moved now because he signed a bridge deal or 2-year deal, I think it was, with Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. And everybody thought for sure that was going to. Well, now Trouba's name is coming up again, and whether or not this is a result of Shattenkirk maybe not being as available, who knows? But you know, that's possible. But the Bruins, Wings, and Leafs are the 3 teams that I hear are really. Now the Bruins I hear is way far in front of this. Okay, so the Bruins have been following Jacob Trouba and scouting Jacob Trouba for a long time. This is their guy that they wanted. I heard even that, people who said that the Bruins were close to getting Shattenkirk, a lot of the feeling was they could probably get Trouba, and they held off because of that instead of going for Shattenkirk. Of course, Detroit has the natural connection to Trouba, being that's where he's from. And the Maple Leafs have always liked Jacob Trouba as well, and I know Lou Lamoriello is a big Jacob Trouba guy. So,
yeah, but the one concern that's been voiced is the fact that at least reports out there have said that Trouba does not want to play for a Canadian team.
And I don't buy that completely.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true.
I don't know if it's true either, but I mean, you look at the situation. Just Trouba is on he's signed up for another year after this year, $3 million, which is very cost effective.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's something that. So it's not like a guy like Shattenkirk who's a pending UFA who you don't know whether there's he's going to be around or not. This guy's at least going to be around for 2 years, and he's an RFA, so you can go to arbitration with him, or you can do the same thing that Winnipeg did and go to war with him and maybe get him to sign another bridge deal or a long-term deal. But there's some certainty there, cost certainty, and the ability to hold on to him for a year. So, I mean, that's got to be attractive for a number of teams.
Here's the thing, though. This is the funny thing is we always knew that Jacob Trouba didn't want to play with Mark Stewart. Mark Stewart's been scratched for like 13 consecutive games.
Yeah, I know.
So if they really are going to trade Jacob Trouba, they better start playing Mark Stewart at some point because he's going to be rusty as hell. So that's why I don't think Trouba's going anywhere this year. I don't. Because I don't think they would have scratched Stewart this many games because they're basically scratching Stewart because Stewart and Trouba don't work. That's my take on it.
Well, maybe they want to get Trouba in the lineup. I mean, that's the other thing too. So,
well, he would be in the lineup anyhow, though, right?
No, they've got to play Trouba to trade him. I mean, they really do. They can't sit Trouba out and expect to get anything for him because Trouba has his detractors. He's not a given. Like, people aren't saying, okay, this is not. There are people out there who think Trouba is a pretender. Like that. Okay. That there are people out there who are totally sold on him. I'm sold on him. I think he's a great player. But there are people out there who who watch Winnipeg all the time that tell me that Trouba's all over the map, and at times. And I know that reputation's gotten around the league too. So they have to play Trouba. They have to show that he's a good player to get anything for him. And I think the fact that they got Trouba to sign such a low contract was specifically done so that they could trade him, and Trouba knew that when he signed it. He's like, because he knew that if I sign a $5 million deal, no one's going to be able to fit me under their cap. So he's going he gets a $3 million thing so he can fit someone's cap.
Go ahead.
The one thing that that 2-year deal does is the fact that on July 1st, he can sign an extension. If he's traded before the draft or at the draft, and he's under contract for another year, $3 million. July 1st, he can sign that extension right away. It's within a year of him being an RFA, so he could get traded to Toronto, Boston, or Detroit, and those teams could sign him to a 7-year or 8-year extension, $6 million. And he gets
right. So here's the thing. So Stewart has 1 more year left on his deal at 2.6, but he's got a modified no trade. If he's got a modified no trade, can he be in the expansion draft or no?
Yes. It's a no move. The only thing
a no move. So
right, yeah,
he's going to be a candidate for that because he's not playing much this year.
Yeah. No, you're right.
I think they might expose a guy like Enstrom just to get rid of that salary.
They could.
They've got so many prospects that they're in a weird spot that they can do a lot of different things right there.
May have a no move. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about Toby Enstrom's contract.
Yeah, status. They have a really interesting situation there going on. So they've got enough prospects to be able to do some bold things. And the Trouba thing was a bold thing that they did. I mean, just to sign him for that kind of a deal and basically to make this work, try to work. They really wanted him to stay, but it sounds like perhaps that he's still not going to stay. And
well, all I can say is this: we can only hope that Kevin Cheveldayoff has come off that ridiculous stance that he was holding when Trouba was still holding out, because nobody is going to give you a top 4 defenseman of a comparable age for Jacob Trouba. No one. A team like Detroit.
I don't know. He's 22 years old. He's got 8 points in 22 games. Like, he's a good enough defenseman that, you know what, when you look at the price of defensemen, yes, his price was high, but he's 22. Where is
the improvement that Detroit can make if they trade Danny DeKeyser in a deal for Jacob Trouba, or or Torrey Krug for Jacob Trouba, or Morgan Riley or Jake Gardner for Jacob.
Torrey Krug and Danny DeKeyser, there's a definite upgrade because Trouba's a way better puck mover and has more offense in his game than Danny DeKeyser. I mean, that's for sure. And he might be more physical than Danny DeKeyser. That's close.
But you understand my point.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean, if they're looking to improve their defense, you're not going to improve your defense unless you think there's such a dramatic difference between Trouba and whoever you're giving up. But most of the time, you're trying to get more than one of those guys. So if you're the Maple Leafs, you're not going to give up Morgan Riley for Jacob Trouba. You might give up Jake Gardner. But Mike Babcock loves Jake Gardner right now.
Yeah. I mean, right now. I mean, I think that if they have that option, they would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think if they could get him, and if it's a matter of replacing Gardner for Trouba, I think they do it in 10 minutes. Like I think if that were an option, it would have already been done.
Yeah,
it would take a lot more than Jake Gardner for.
Yeah, but I think they could put more in, and I think that this is a definite player that I've heard Lou Lamoriello really likes and has liked since he first came in the league in New Jersey. When Lou was in New Jersey still. So, I think that. I mean, Lou has tended to build his teams from goalie out, right? And this is his kind of defenseman,
right?
Who just is a total gamer, and Trouba's a gamer, and he, the kind of player who plays very emotionally up and down at times. And I think that also is something that Lou likes because Lou believes you can, if you have an emotional player like that, you can get him to work for you.
Well, Trouba, I'm pretty confident in saying that if they got Trouba would be on their top pairing with Riley. That would be the go-to pairing.
Great. I mean, you'd have left-handed, right-handed shot there. You'd have a lot going on. I mean, it would be really solid. And so, I mean, I think if it happens this year or not, who knows? But
they're 1 point out of the playoffs. They're not trading Jacob Trouba with one. I think you got a better chance of seeing Mark Stewart go for draft picks this year than you see Trouba going when they're only a point out of the playoffs.
I don't think they would move either for draft picks. I think both would have to be a move that they would consider something that would keep them going.
I don't think you can get a lot for Stewart. I mean, he's 32, right? I mean, what are you going to really get?
You're not going to get a ton for him, but
depth guy.
Yeah, he's more of a depth player. But they have so many prospects. The Jets are definitely a team that's trying to add players who can help them make the playoffs and win now. I mean, that's what they're going to try to do. So because the future is solid and they've done a good job at sort of taking their time with a lot of these players.
They have.
So they're not going to rush them, and
they could overtake Dallas, who's ahead of them. It's just a matter of look, Calgary's a few points in, so Calgary would be the natural team that we think would fall out of it. But
right.
You never know. Even Anaheim. I mean, Calgary or Anaheim, depending on how Anaheim fits in that division. Even Edmonton. I mean, they're going to be in it.
All three of the teams are susceptible, I think.
Whereas all three of those Eastern Conference teams that you mentioned in the rumor act, they're all looking for long-term solutions on their blue line, not hole pluggers, not rentals. They're looking, and that's where Trouba fits in at 22, and they'll hold on to him until at least 25 and maybe longer. That's what they want. Yeah, I agree. All right, we'll talk more about this tomorrow, and more about other things as well. So thanks everybody for tuning in and joining us. And remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you then.